All right, welcome to episode 7 of John's Voice. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to talk about our enemy. And again, as I've said many times, this show's not about me. I'm merely just delivering a message. But I will also tell you one thing about myself is that I do have some military experience. And one of the things that I learned in the military was Sun Tzu's Art of War. I thought it was absolutely just beautiful. One of the key factors that came out of Sun Tzu's Art of War that I found to be the most prominent teaching was that if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. That message was paramount to being able to fight in battle. Because there's always this underlying thing that I am seeking to know my enemy. And when you know your enemy, you try to look at yourself through your enemy's eyes. I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you've not been in that position. But what I'll ask you to do is I'll ask you to search yourself. Have you ever confronted evil? Like I'm not talking about the day-to-day things that seem like they're bad, they're uncomfortable. I am talking about evil. Most of us that have been in combat, most of us that have been on the battlefield before has seen this evil that I speak of. People that have the capability of doing things that you really do not think sometimes are humanly possible. You know, here in the States, some of the things that kind of draw us to this level of evil is any of the abuses against children. Those stand out, but they're even more subtle. We hear of stories where these men, these women, they go into an alcoholic rage and they kill their families. And it's just, there's something about that act that resonates with us as, yeah, there's good, yeah, there's bad. This is a different category. And I mean, even before I became a knower of Jesus Christ, I too was always noticing that there were certain things that would trigger this response of, that's just evil. So today's show, we're going to be talking about Satan. We're going to talk about his tactics. We're going to talk about the ways in which the attacks come. We're even going to talk about how he gains a foothold and the evidences of these footholds. So bear with me on this. I understand that if you have no grounding in faith, that this would totally come as a shock to the system. And believe me on this one. It was a total shock to me as a person who had only seen this stuff. I found myself intrigued by the writings of a man named Dr. Richard Gallagher. Dr. Richard Gallagher was a psychiatrist, and 100% like myself, he had no foundation in faith, no reason to believe, and he was asked to assist in determining when someone was possessed. Now, before we get started down the lane of possession, you need to know that possession is extremely rare. But he was asked to sit in to help determine when people were possessed. And this is from the 80s, and you're more than welcome to look him up, Dr. Richard Gallagher. And he asked, like, the priest that had asked him to set in to help make this determination. He's like, why out of all people would you ask me? I don't have any faith. And the priest said, well, that's the perfect reason why I would ask you to set in. And this logic now makes sense to me. It didn't make sense to me before, but I don't need someone to agree with me. I mean, if we look truly what goes on in our society today, we find ourselves in echo chambers. We surround ourselves with people who think exactly like we do, and we don't want anyone in our circle that challenges us to think anything other than that. And I'll tell you, that's dangerous. That is very dangerous when you don't respect opposing ideas and positions. I do not in any way hate any other religion, any other faith. You see, just because I hold that the Roman Catholic Church is the one true faith doesn't mean that I don't think that that Baptists are evil or anything like that. Absolutely not. Doesn't mean I think Muslims are bad. Doesn't mean any of that. Somehow or another, we've gotten into a society of this duality of thinking, and I'll explain why I think that is. And it all comes through how Satan's tactics operate. See, one of Satan's first tactics when coming to know your enemy, the first tactic that he uses is deception. All right? These come in the form of like empty promises, false hopes. And what they do is they conceal fundamental truths. Right? So a deception, calling something other than what it actually is. Now, I don't want to have myself flagged again on this video, but think of some things in our society today where something is obviously one thing, but it calls itself something else and wants everyone around them to call them this thing that they say that they are because that's how they feel. That is deceptive. Surgeries, procedures, all kinds of things are done in order to be able to mimic, but they are deceptive. So, the other part of deception comes in the form of wordsmithing. This is another common tactic. For example, abortion would be called reproductive freedom or choice. That is wordsmithing. That deceives what it actually is. If they would just call it what it is the killing of a human life, that's a little harder to swallow. So Satan will use tactics like that of wordsmithing it, making it something else. When he attacks our faith, they'll use things of they're in darkness. They're ignorant. This is old-fashioned. This is not progressive. It's part of the deceptive tactic that he uses. Part of that deception is also misinformation. I need not look any further than the media nowadays with the misinformation and the times that they focus only to highlight the things that reveal what they want you to see. You know, the numbers are always skewed. They're always taking things out of context to present only the facts as they want you to see them. Never, you have to dig to find the real facts anymore, because deception is the first tactic that Satan will use. Now, the second tactic that he will use is division. And really, if you look at the etymology of the word, it's diabolical. Diabolical comes from another word called diaboline, right? This means to cut, to tear, to divide, anything that would sever unity. When we see division being created, a division where this is all that matters, that is all that matters, only this and not that, not including a unity, not speaking to the unity of all life, not speaking to the unity of all of that. That is still part of division. Again, I don't know how in society we have gotten to this point to say that if I am against something that I hate it. I grew up, my mother used to make me eat Brussels sprouts, right? I didn't hate Brussels sprouts. I just didn't like them. They didn't taste good to me. But I certainly didn't want to eliminate them from the face of the planet. I certainly didn't want I didn't launch a campaign against them. I just didn't like them. I just didn't want to eat them. And if you do, that's fine. And if I don't, that's fine. I respect the fact you like them. I'd ask that you respect the fact that I don't. I don't seek to divide people where they stand at on Brussels sprouts. If you like them, eat them. If you don't like them, don't eat them. But please don't try to force other people to eat them. And I'll ask the same of you. I won't force you to not eat them because I don't like them. But that doesn't constitute hate. Hate is a very strong word, and unfortunately, I think when it gets used today, it always gets used in the context of the opposite of love. That is also not true. The opposite of love is fear, not hate. This idea that love trumps hate is asinine. Love, the opposite of love, is fear. Fear is the greater of the emotions. Hate is you hate that which you fear. Fear being the overwhelming emotion that's opposite of love. Love does not trump hate. Hate is born out of fear. And so there is where that division comes in. There's something off in the teaching, which goes back to the first one, which is the misinformation. The third tactic that Satan likes to use is diversion. Okay? In the military, we love to create a diversion, right? Anything that draws your attention away from the real truth. So his third tactic that Satan will use will be diversion. So fear falls into the category of a diversion because that takes your focus off of truth. So if I can create a diversion to get you to focus more on the love trumps hate, I'm actually utilizing fear to be able to even get that emotion to go back to dividing you and continue the deception. Again, these are how those tactics tie into one another. And then finally, discouragement. Discouragement is the fourth tactic that Satan loves to use. It comes in many forms: fatigue, personal failings, setbacks, obstacles. These discourage us. I'll challenge you if you want to see how it works. I have tried many times to dive into the Bible and read. I love to read. I love to read books. I can pick up a book. Man, I love to read through it. I'm one of those, I like to highlight, take pictures, make a copy. Like, I really like this idea, this thought. But then I can pick up the Bible. And I'm telling you, I lay down at night, grab it. I start to try to read the Bible. The next thing you know, I start falling asleep. I start nodding off. My attention is not there, and I'll get discouraged. I want to be able to read this. I want to be able to focus. But all of a sudden, it's like now, I wasn't tired a minute ago. Flip it, and if I'm sitting and watching Netflix, I can sit and binge watch Netflix over and over and over again and look at the clock and be like, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I got to go to bed. But if I pick up that Bible and try to read it, I might get through a chapter, and all of a sudden now my eyes are watering, I'm yawning. Creates discouragement. Same thing with personal failings, trying to do something. You know, you take like this, you take like John's voice. It's discouraging that I look to see, you know, how many subscribers or how many people listen. Look at the numbers and I'm like, am I doing any good at all? Am I reaching enough people? And so discouragement sets in. But I'll also tell you that it doesn't work anymore for someone whose faith grows every day. It doesn't work. Because eventually what will happen is that even should I die, which I'm not afraid of that, I hope that someday that my children and my children's children are able to look back and see that John's voice was their grandfather. And he's imparting with them the knowledge that he had at that time. And if it just saves one soul, here's the point I think most of the people who call themselves Christians today miss. One soul is worth it. If this saves but one soul, there is no need for me to be discouraged. There is no need for me to want to see that a lot of people are receiving this message. Would I love to save millions of people, billions of people? I would. But would I sacrifice it all just for one? That too. That would be worth it. So do not be discouraged, because that is part of the 4 ways that Satan attacks us. Now, let's talk about when he finally gets his foothold. Because most of the time we find ourselves, and as I stated before, it is rare. It is very rare for possession to happen. But just because something is rare doesn't mean that it cannot happen. And I would also tell you, if you look at Dr. Richard Gallagher, probably I think 24,000 at last I read was the different patients that he had seen, and very, very few of those did turn out to be possession. But we've also tricked ourselves into thinking that possession was the only one you had to worry about. Well, let's look at those 4 ways that Satan gains his foothold. So one of the first ways is infestation. Infestation meaning, I guess, to loosely define it for someone to know, would be similar to that of a haunted house, but not like the movie shows, so to speak. I will tell you that there are people who have seen, my family included, will claim that they see dark figures moving in the house. They catch them off to the sides of their eyes. They see things moving upstairs. They write it off as, am I just seeing things? Maybe I'm just tired. Was it a shadow? Was it something? But infestation is one of the first. I had this closet in my house. I don't have an explanation for this, so if you're waiting to hear some great explanation, I'm sorry, I can't give you one. There was a particular closet in my house that used to have this smell of smoke in it, but it wasn't all the time. You would walk into this closet and you would think someone had been smoking in there. Now, keep in mind, there are no smokers in my house. I haven't had anybody who does smoke come into the house. And this house had been used before, and I could definitely see that you could probably think that, well, there was probably someone who lived there before. Maybe they smoked, and maybe they were in that room. And no, it wasn't like that. You only smelled it at certain times. And I don't have an explanation for it. I also can't explain as to why, after that, I invited a priest to come over to the house and bless the house, and I explained to him of the smell that was coming from that closet, that after this closet was blessed, we never smelt it again. I don't have an explanation for that. And if you would like for me to tell you, well, he exorcised a demon, I wouldn't take that off the table, but I couldn't tell you with 100% certainty that was the case. I just know that I don't understand it. I don't understand how, after a priest blessed that room, that smell doesn't come back anymore. But that's known as infestation. You see things around your house, you have no explanation for them. And yet, if you talk about them and you are aware of them, you know that there is some truth to this, that you've seen something in your own home and you were unsettled by it. There are other people that'll go further with that and tell you they've seen very bad things in their house. So that's one of the first ways that he's gaining a foothold. The second way is through what's known as oppression. Now, this comes in the form of physical attacks. And a lot of this oppression, I also find it very ironic. It comes through major illnesses, through depression, through anxiety, all types of psychological disorders. This is one of the ways that Satan starts to oppress. Now, does it mean that because someone has anxiety or someone has depression, does that mean that they are under a satanic oppression? No, it doesn't. But does it mean that you should probably look a little more at that if you start seeing some of these other things, such as infestations, such as oppression, such as some of the others? It does. In other words, it doesn't mean that everybody who has depression or anxiety is under satanic oppression. But it does mean to stay alert. Because again, if we go back to the tactics of deception, diversion, division, and discouragement, having you off guard is exactly the position that the enemy wants you to be in. Some other forms of oppression comes in severe financial or employment problems. Because again, that's part of the discouragement. It takes your focus off of wanting to get back in touch with the truth of all that is. And it makes you focus just on the world. I need money to survive in the world, and I don't have a job right now, and I'm not employed, or I just lost my job, or I just got laid off. And so when we most need God, this oppression moves us towards not going down the path of this narrow path of following Christ. So oppression would be the second way of gaining a foothold into your life. The third is obsession. Again, turn back around and look at the world. Challenge me on this if you think obsession, satanic obsession. These people have a hard time focusing. They're preoccupied with the demonic. And as we already said before, demonic coming from diaboline, to cut, to tear, divide. Things like suicide, pornography, alcohol, all of these things. Someone who becomes preoccupied with suicide, that killing themselves is all they can think about. Or the stranglehold that people find themselves under when they're addicted to pornography. All of the tools that are used nowadays to bring pornography into your life. I look at the way things have evolved in our society, and it seems that more and more and more we don't talk of virtues anymore. TikTok wasn't created so that young men and women could be on there to show how virtuous they are. It's to show this dance or to show anything that gets your attention drawn into the physical. So there becomes this addiction of where you will see more and more people are just sitting on their phones and scrolling through pornography. And it starts out small at first. Again, that's how the attack starts, remember, through deception, division, diversion, and discouragement. So this would fall under that diversion. Creates a diversion. In fact, if we look at the Spanish word, diversión, it's fun. Does that mean everything fun is satanic? No. But a diversion. It's something that takes your eyes off of, to keep you focused on the world and to not think about eternal salvation. So that's obsession. Alcohol. I have seen many people fight this demon. And sadly, I've seen many people lose against that demon. And it is very demonic. I've seen alcohol rip apart families. All of these things that we've talked about here. Tell me that if you haven't lived with an alcoholic, you don't know of deception. Tell me you haven't seen how an alcoholic can create division within a household. Tell me if you haven't seen how an alcoholic will use diversion and discouragement. They drink because of discouragement, which also then discourages their family. This one is one that I have firsthand knowledge of. That demonic obsession is one of the third ways of Satan getting his foothold. And finally, it's possession. He attacks, and it's progressive, as we've laid out here, and he takes over the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual of a person. They are broken down. Now, that person never loses the beautiful gift that they were given of free will, but it becomes severely compromised because now Satan is in possession of this soul. And it is, sadly, still well documented that this can happen, that this does happen. But does that mean that is his only attack? No. Can Satan stay with you through obsession, through oppression or infestation? Absolutely. The further you stay away from the truth and the longer that you dwell in darkness, the more those tactics begin the process of doing the very thing which is costing you your soul. That's truth. And if you feel that if you ever catch the glimpse that the enemy is in this mode of attacking you, just know that if you reach out to the church, you will not find yourself cast aside. You are not so far gone that there is not hope for you. But then you have to know that when it comes to the churches that are best equipped to being able to help you in that, the Roman Catholic Church is the one true faith. Now, again, do not take that as hatred towards any of the others. But my question to you is this: who is the founder of your church? Like, who is your founder? So, if you're a Lutheran, Martin Luther is your founder. He was an ex-monk of the Catholic Church, and this was in the year 1517. So that would be the founder of the Lutheran Church. If you Presbyterian, that was founded by John Knox in Scotland in the year of 1560. This was after Martin Luther first broke away and protested the Roman Catholic Church. So the Presbyterians, 1560, John Knox. If you are a Congregationalist, that is Robert Brown. That was in Holland in 1582. That again came from the Reformation, again through the Protestant Reformation of the church. If you're Baptist, the tenets of your religion belong to John Smith. Around 1605 in Amsterdam was when he first started the Baptist. So today, you have the Southern Baptists and everything else, but they all can trace their roots back to John Smith. Dutch Reformed Church, that is Michaelis Jones. He originated that around New York in 1628. Protestant Episcopalian, that is an offshoot of the Church of England, which, incidentally, Church of England, founded by King Henry VIII, 1534, because the Pope would not grant him a divorce with the right to remarry. So the Protestant Episcopalian, which was founded by Samuel Seabury in the American colonies in the 17th century. I don't have a solid date on that one. I will continue to dig until I can get a solid date, but I don't think there's a solid date for that one. If you're a Methodist, that's John and Charles Wesley. That was founded in England in 1744. If you are Unitarian, that is Theophilus Lindley. They founded that church in London in 1774. If you are Mormon, Latter-day Saints, whatever the term is, that's Joseph Smith. And he started that religion in Palmyra, New York, 1829. If you worship with the Salvation Army, which if you're, not John. John thought the Salvation Army was nothing more than a place where you could go and get like Goodwill. I did not realize Salvation Army was a religion, but that began with William Booth in London in 1865. If you're a Christian Scientist, then 1879 is roughly the year that religion was established by Miss Mary Baker Eddy as the founder of that faith. And if you belong to any of the other organizations, that's the Church of the Nazarene, Pentecostal Gospel, Holiness Church, Pilgrim Holiness Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, that's one of the hundreds of sects that's founded by men within the past 100 years. So those only go back 100 years. But like I said, if I put them all into a category, there's like over 45,000 as of today. And I mean, the division, again, as we go back and we looked at those tactics, that's part of the division. Does that mean I hate you? It does not. Absolutely not. No. Because you do believe, in some form you believe in Jesus. But if you believe in Jesus, it's not just John 3:16. It's not just this one passage that says it all, that belief in Jesus is all you need. That's not just part of it. It is part of the equation, but that's not the whole equation. But if you're Roman Catholic, our religion was founded 33 AD, roughly 33 AD, 31 to 33, depending on which historian you're talking to. Founded by Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It is still the same church. And I get it. You can look at the church and you can actually see Jesus said that the gates of hell would not prevail against the church. We can look at the Roman Catholic Church today. Will I find deception? Absolutely. Will I find division? Absolutely. I was reading just today that because of the requirement of the mask at the Mass, and because of the suspension of masks, I was reading where there were parishioners that were wanting to go off and start their own because they were tired of the way that the bishops and some of the prelates have reacted in response to the coronavirus. And I'm telling you, that's not the answer. Is our church in an ugly state nowadays because of the tactics that have been used by Satan? It is. But do not let yourself be deceived. Don't engage in the division. Don't be looking at the diversion that has been created, and certainly do not become discouraged. As long as we know the tactics of the enemy, and we keep our faith solid, I believe that Jesus will do exactly what he said he would do. It's just merely that we're finding his church is going through her passion now. And it's hard for us to watch, especially for those of us that are new. It's hard to watch the beauty of the church come under this level of attack. But now we know who the enemy is. Now's not a time for us to be divided. If anything, I need more of you to come back to the one true church, to help clean it up, to help make it the beauty and the glory that it was intended to be. Jesus is still in charge. His body and his blood is still found present in that church today. God knows we need him more now in this world than we ever did. But until the next week's episode, take care of yourself. God bless you. I hope to see you at Mass.